The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and official, with the county seal embossed on the corner. I remember standing in the kitchen, still in my work clothes from the night shift at the hospital, my hands trembling as I opened it. Final notice of foreclosure. The words blurred together as tears welled in my eyes. 30 days to pay $60,000, or lose the house where I'd raised my children, where my husband Daniel and I had built 23 years of memories. Daniel had been gone for 2 years now, taken by cancer that had drained our savings faster than I could earn it back. The medical bills, the experimental treatments we'd hoped would give us more time, they'd left me drowning in debt. But I'd been managing barely, working double shifts as a nurse, selling anything of value we didn't absolutely need. I thought I had more time to catch up on the mortgage. I was wrong. I stood there in the kitchen, that terrible letter in my hand, and felt the weight of failure crushing down on my chest. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was where Daniel had taught our daughter Emma to ride her bike in the driveway. According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. It was where our son Marcus had scored the winning goal in imaginary soccer matches on the back lawn. It was where Daniel and I had slow danced in the living room on our anniversary, year after year, even when money was tight and we couldn't afford to go out. My children were grown now. Emma was 25, Marcus 22, both working their own jobs, building their own lives. They'd offered to help when Daniel got sick, but I'd refused, not wanting to burden them with debt at the start of their adult lives. Pride, maybe, or love, probably both. I called Emma first. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright with the innocence of someone who didn't yet know their world was about to tilt. "Mom, you okay? You sound weird." "I need to talk to you and Marcus," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Can you both come over tonight?" By 7 o'clock, we were sitting around the same kitchen table where we'd had countless family dinners. The foreclosure notice spread between us like an accusation. Emma's face had gone pale, her hand covering her mouth. Marcus leaned forward, his jaw tight with anger, not at me, but at the situation, at life's unfairness. $60,000, Marcus said, shaking his head. "In 30 days. Mom, why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I thought I could handle it," I admitted, my voice small. "I didn't want to worry you." Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out. We're family. Maybe we can get a loan or—" "No," I said firmly. "You two are not going into debt for this. You're just starting out. This is my problem." "It's our childhood home," Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. "It's Dad's house." That's when Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then sat up straighter. "Wait," she said, reading something on her screen. "Mom, didn't you tell me last year that Aunt Vanessa and Uncle Rick bought a rental property?" Vanessa was my sister, 3 years younger than me, married to Rick, a successful real estate developer. They lived in a sprawling house across town, took vacations to Europe twice a year, drove cars that cost more than I made in a year. We'd been close once, when we were young, but as her life had grown more prosperous and mine more difficult, a distance had opened between us. Not hostile exactly, but careful, polite. "They have several properties," I said slowly, not sure where Emma was going with this. "So they have money," Emma pressed. "Mom, they're family. Maybe they could help. A loan at least. Better than losing the house." I felt my stomach twist. The idea of asking Vanessa for money felt like swallowing glass. She'd always been the prettier one, the lucky one, the one who married well. I'd never begrudged her that. I'd loved Daniel with my whole heart, and our life had been rich in ways that had nothing to do with money. But now, to come to her as a beggar? "I don't know," I murmured. "Mom?" Marcus said, leaning forward intensely. "For Dad. We can't let them take Dad's house." That broke me. My children shouldn't have to see me like this, shouldn't have to fight my battles. But they were right. This house held Daniel's spirit in every corner. I couldn't let it go without trying everything. The next morning, I called Vanessa. She answered on the first ring, her voice cheerful. "Sarah, what a nice surprise. I was just thinking about you." We made small talk for a few minutes, her latest vacation, Marcus's new job, Emma's promotion. Then I took a breath and told her everything. the foreclosure notice, the $60,000, the 30-day deadline. My voice cracked as I explained about Daniel's medical bills, about working myself to exhaustion, about trying so hard to keep it all together. There was a pause on the other end. Then Vanessa's voice came back, softer, more serious. "Oh, Sarah. Sweetie, I had no idea things were this bad. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want to burden anyone," I said, wiping at my eyes. "You're my sister," Vanessa said firmly. "This is what family is for. Listen, let me talk to Rick tonight. We'll figure something out. Can you come over tomorrow evening? Say 7 o'clock? Hope bloomed in my chest like a flower breaking through concrete. "Really? Vanessa, I can't tell you what this means." "Don't even worry about it," she said warmly. "We're family. That's what matters. See you tomorrow." I hung up and immediately called Emma and Marcus, my voice shaking with relief. We were going to be okay. Family was going to save us. The next evening, I drove to Vanessa's house in the suburbs, past manicured lawns and 3-car garages. Their home was a modern colonial, with white pillars and landscaping that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. I'd been here for holidays, for their 20th wedding anniversary party, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, I was coming as a supplicant. Rick answered the door, his smile broad and welcoming. He was a big man, barrel-chested, with silver hair and an expensive watch that caught the porch light. "Sarah, come in, come in. Vanessa's just finishing up in the kitchen." The house smelled like vanilla and expensive candles. I followed Rick into the living room, sinking into a leather couch that probably cost more than my car. Vanessa emerged a moment later, carrying a tray with coffee and pastries, looking elegant in casual clothes that somehow managed to look designer. "Sarah, sweetheart, you look exhausted," Vanessa said, setting down the tray and pulling me into a hug. "You're working too hard." "I don't have much choice," I said with a weak smile. We settled in, made more small talk. And then Rick cleared his throat. "So, Vanessa told me about your situation. The foreclosure notice. That's rough, Sarah. Really rough." "It is," I agreed. My hands wrapped around the coffee cup for warmth, even though the house wasn't cold. "I've tried everything I can think of. Refinancing isn't an option with my credit. I can't get a personal loan big enough. I've sold almost everything valuable we owned. I'm out of options." Vanessa and Rick exchanged a look, something passing between them that I couldn't quite read. Then Vanessa reached over and patted my knee. "We want to help, Sarah. We really do. You're family." Relief washed over me so powerfully I nearly sobbed. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll pay you back, I swear. With interest, whatever you want. I just need time." Rick held up a hand. "Now let's talk about the details. 60,000 is a significant amount of money, Sarah. Even for us, it's not pocket change." "I understand," I said quickly. "We can write up a contract, make it official. I'll pay you back monthly, whatever amount we agree on." "Actually," Rick said, leaning back in his chair, "we had a different thought, more of an investment opportunity that would benefit all of us." I blinked. "I'm not sure I understand." Vanessa jumped in, her voice soothing. "Honey, the thing is, we can't just give you $60,000 and hope you can pay it back. That's not responsible for either of us. But we had another idea. What if we paid off your mortgage, cleared the whole debt, and in exchange, you signed the house over to us?" The words took a moment to land. "Sign the house over?" "It's just a temporary measure," Rick said quickly, holding up his hands. "Think of it like this. We pay off your debt, take ownership of the house, and then you can stay there as a renter. Much lower monthly payments, say $1,200 a month instead of $2,000. You'd actually save money." My head was spinning. "But it would be your house." "On paper, yes," Vanessa said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "But Sarah, you'd still be living there. It would still be your home. And this way, you're not drowning in debt trying to pay us back. You just pay rent, which you can afford on your salary. And honestly," Rick added, "it's the only way this works financially for us. We'd be taking on your debt and giving you a place to live at below market rent. It's actually a really generous offer when you think about it." I stared at them, my mind trying to process what they were proposing. Give up ownership of Daniel's house? The house where we'd built our life together? "But what happens if I want to buy it back someday?" I asked. "When I've saved up enough, or when—" "We can figure that out down the road," Rick said with a dismissive wave. "Maybe we'll sell it back to you. Maybe we'll work out some kind of equity arrangement. We're family, Sarah. We'll work it out. Something felt wrong, a crawling sensation in my gut. But the foreclosure clock was ticking. 26 days left. I thought about Emma and Marcus, about Daniel's memory, about standing in the driveway, watching them bulldoze our life. Can I think about it? I asked. Vanessa's smile tightened slightly. Of course, honey, but don't think too long. We need to get the paperwork started pretty quickly if we're going to beat the foreclosure deadline. These things take time. I left their house that night feeling sick. When I got home, Emma and Marcus were waiting for me, anxious to hear the news. I explained Vanessa and Rick's proposal, watching their faces shift from hope to confusion to concern. Mom, no, Emma said immediately. That's not right. You'd be giving up Dad's house. But I'd still be living there, I argued, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince them or myself. And it would save us from foreclosure. Marcus shook his head. Why can't they just loan you the money? Why do they need to take the house? They said it's the only way it makes financial sense for them, I explained. That's bull, Marcus said flatly. They have money to burn. Mom, this feels wrong. It feels wrong to me too, I admitted. But what choice do I have? We stayed up late that night, going in circles. Emma called a lawyer friend who confirmed that yes, the arrangement was legal, but warned that without equity in the house, I'd be at their mercy. Marcus wanted me to declare bankruptcy instead, but I couldn't stomach the idea of that mark on my record, and it might not even save the house. Over the next 3 days, Vanessa called me repeatedly, her voice growing more urgent. Sarah, honey, we need to move on this. The clock is ticking. Rick talked to our lawyer, and he says we need at least 3 weeks to get everything processed. I'm just not sure, I kept saying. On the 4th day, Vanessa's tone changed. Sarah, I need you to understand something. This offer isn't open forever. Rick is taking a huge risk here, and if you're not interested, we need to know so we can plan accordingly. We have other investment opportunities. The threat was subtle but clear. Take it or leave it. But leave it means losing everything. That night, lying in bed in the house where Daniel and I had slept for over 2 decades, I made my decision. I couldn't let the bank take this house. I couldn't let Emma and Marcus lose their childhood home. Maybe Vanessa and Rick's offer wasn't perfect, but it was a lifeline, and I was drowning. I called Vanessa in the morning. Okay, I said, I'll do it. She squealed with delight. Oh, Sarah, you're making the right decision. I promise you won't regret this. Rick will have the lawyer draw up the papers. We'll need you to sign this week. 3 days later, I sat in a sterile office across from Rick and Vanessa's lawyer, a thin man named Peterson, who spoke in a monotone and pushed papers across the desk at me. The documents were thick, dense with legal language I barely understood. Essentially, Peterson explained, you're executing a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership of the property to Richard and Vanessa Morrison in exchange for their assumption of the mortgage debt. You'll simultaneously enter into a month-to-month rental agreement with them for $1,200 per month. Month to month? I asked, my pen pausing. I thought this was a long-term arrangement. Peterson glanced at Rick, who smiled reassuringly. It's standard, Sarah. Month to month gives both parties flexibility. But like I said, you're family. We're not going to kick you out. Emma had wanted to come with me, to have her lawyer friend review the documents, but Vanessa had been insistent that we needed to close quickly. The foreclosure is in 17 days, Sarah. We don't have time for back and forth with lawyers. Don't you trust us? And that was the thing. They were family. Vanessa was my sister. We'd shared a childhood, grown up in the same house, played together, fought together, survived our difficult parents together. Blood mattered. Family mattered. I signed the papers. Rick wrote a check to the mortgage company that afternoon. By the next morning, the foreclosure notice was withdrawn. The house was saved, and it no longer belonged to me. For 2 weeks, everything seemed fine. I paid Vanessa the first month's rent, actually grateful that it was lower than my old mortgage payment. She came by with a housewarming gift, which felt strange since I'd lived here for 23 years, but I appreciated the gesture. A nice set of candles, and a card that said, "Here's to new beginnings." Emma and Marcus were quieter about the arrangement, still uneasy, but they could see I was relieved. The crushing weight of foreclosure was gone. I could breathe again. Then, on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after I'd signed the papers, there was a knock at the door. I answered it to find a young couple standing on my porch, A man in his 30s with carefully styled hair and a woman with a baby on her hip. "Hi," the man said with a confused smile. "I'm sorry, I think there might be some mistake. We're the Hendersons. We're supposed to meet the landlord here to do a walkthrough before we move in next month." The world tilted. "I'm sorry, what?" The woman checked her phone. "Vanessa Morrison? She told us this property would be available December 1st. We're renting it. Are you the current tenant?" My hands went numb. "There must be some mistake," I said faintly. "This is my house. I mean, I rent it, but—" The man's expression shifted to concern. "Oh no, did she not tell you? She said the previous tenant was moving out. We've already given her first and last month's rent and a security deposit." I closed the door, my heart hammering, and immediately called Vanessa. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail, I called Rick. Voicemail, I called 4 more times over the next hour. Nothing. Finally, at 3 in the afternoon, Vanessa called back. Her voice was strangely distant, professional in a way I'd never heard from her before. "Sarah, hi, sorry I missed your calls. I've been busy." "Vanessa, there were people at my door," I said, my voice shaking. "They said they're moving in next month. They said you're renting them the house." A pause. Then, "Oh, right. I was going to call you about that." "Going to call me?" "Sarah, I thought I explained this. The rental agreement was month to month. Rick and I have decided to rent the property to someone else. We're giving you 30 days' notice, as required by the lease." I couldn't breathe. "You're evicting me." "Don't think of it as eviction," Vanessa said, her tone almost soothing, like she was speaking to a child. "Think of it as the arrangement running its course. We gave you a great deal for a month, didn't we? Below market rent. Now it's time for you to find your own place. Vanessa, this is my home. Dad's home. I said we'd help you avoid foreclosure, and we did. The house was going to be taken from you anyway, Sarah. At least this way you got an extra month." Rage and grief crashed through me in equal measure. You planned this. You planned this from the beginning." "Don't be dramatic," Vanessa said, her voice cooling. "We made a business decision. Rick and I can get $1,800 a month for that property on the open market. We were losing money with you there. It's just business, Sarah. We're sisters." "Yes, and I helped my sister avoid foreclosure," Vanessa said sharply. "You're acting ungrateful. Honestly, we took on your debt. The house would have been lost anyway. Now you have 30 days to figure out your next steps. And that's more than the bank was going to give you." I was crying now, hot tears of rage and betrayal. I could have found another way. I could have— "You couldn't," Vanessa interrupted. "You were out of options. We both know that. Look, Sarah, I'm sorry you're upset, but this is how the world works. You need to start being more realistic about your situation. Maybe this is the wake-up call you needed." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, in what used to be my kitchen, and screamed, a primal, broken sound that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Then I sank to the floor and sobbed like I hadn't since Daniel died. Emma and Marcus came over within an hour of my frantic calls. Emma was crying too, furious and heartbroken. Marcus paced the kitchen like a caged animal, his hands clenched into fists. "We'll sue them," Marcus said. "This has to be fraud or something. They tricked you." But we called Emma's lawyer friend, and the answer was devastating. No, it wasn't illegal. Unethical, cruel, but not illegal. I'd signed a month-to-month lease. They'd given proper notice. The house was legally theirs. There was no recourse. "But Mom gave them the house to avoid foreclosure," Emma argued to the lawyer over speakerphone. "They promised it was temporary." "Did they put that in writing?" the lawyer asked gently. "Any clause about selling it back or long-term rental?" No, there was nothing in writing, just family trust, which apparently meant nothing. Over the next week, I tried calling Vanessa 6 more times. She never answered. Rick answered once, his voice cold and professional, telling me that all communication should go through their lawyer going forward. Their lawyer sent me a formal eviction notice, 30 days from the date I'd signed the rental agreement. I had 3 weeks to find a new place to live. Friends from work helped me search for apartments. Everything in my price range was tiny, dingy, in dangerous neighborhoods. I'd be trading the home where I'd raised my children for a 1-bedroom unit above a liquor store. Emma wanted me to move in with her, but her apartment was barely big enough for one person. Marcus had roommates. Neither of them could take me in without significant sacrifice, and I wouldn't let them upend their lives for my mistakes, because it was a mistake. I saw that now, with the clarity of hindsight. I'd been so desperate to save the house that I'd signed it away to someone I should have been able to trust. I'd let fear and love blind me to the warning signs. The worst part was facing the house itself, walking through rooms where Daniel and I had built our life, knowing that in 3 weeks, strangers would sleep in our bedroom, cook in our kitchen, that another child would play in the backyard where our children had grown up. I'd traded everything for 1 month of false security. Some nights, I imagined confronting Vanessa in person, screaming at her, making her face what she'd done. Other nights, I fantasized about revenge, telling all our relatives, posting on social media, exposing her cruelty to the world. But what would it accomplish? She had the law on her side. She had the money. I had nothing but rage and grief. So, I did nothing. I packed my life into boxes, found a studio apartment in a neighborhood that made me nervous to walk after dark, and prepared to leave. Days before the eviction deadline, my coworker Linda pulled me aside at the hospital. "Sarah, honey, have you seen the news?" She pulled up a local news website on her phone. The headline read, "Local real estate developer facing investigation for property fraud." My heart stopped. Rick's photo stared out from the screen. Linda scrolled down reading, "Richard Morrison, owner of Morrison Properties, is under investigation by the State Attorney General's office for allegations of fraudulent property flipping and tenant displacement schemes. Multiple former homeowners have come forward claiming Morrison and his associates convinced them to sign over properties under false pretenses, promising temporary arrangements before evicting them and selling the homes for profit. The investigation centers on whether Morrison violated state consumer protection laws and predatory lending statutes." "That's your brother-in-law, right?" Linda asked. "The one who took your house?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen. Over the next few days, the story exploded. It turned out Rick had been running a scheme for years, targeting desperate homeowners facing foreclosure. He'd convinced them to sign over their properties with promises of being able to stay as renters or buy the homes back, then evict them within months and sell the properties for massive profits. Dozens of victims came forward. The state attorney general held a press conference calling it one of the most egregious cases of financial elder abuse and exploitation we've seen. Vanessa's name appeared in the articles, too. She was listed as co-owner of the properties, co-signer on the deeds. Whether she was an active participant or just benefiting from Rick's schemes was unclear, but legally, it didn't matter. She was implicated. Then came the freeze on their assets. The state put a hold on all Morrison Properties holdings pending the investigation, including the house, my house, that they'd taken from me. The Hendersons, the couple who were supposed to move in, called me apologetically. "We got notice that the rental agreement is canceled, something about a legal investigation. We got our deposit back, but the property is apparently tied up in court now." I called the Attorney General's office, explained my situation, and was connected to a lawyer working on the case. Her name was Patricia Chen, and her voice was kind but professional. "Ms. Reed, you're not alone in this," she told me. "We have 43 other cases almost identical to yours. In every case, Mr. Morrison identified homeowners facing foreclosure, offered to help by taking ownership of the property, then evicted them within 30 to 60 days. He'd then either rent the properties at market rate or sell them outright, making substantial profits. What happens to my house?" I asked, almost afraid to hope. "That's complicated," Patricia admitted. "The property is legally his right now, but we're building a case that the entire scheme violated multiple state laws. If we succeed, we may be able to reverse the transfers and return the properties to the original owners, but it could take months, maybe over a year." "I have 3 days before I'm legally evicted," I said. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Don't move out, not yet. With the asset freeze in place and the ongoing investigation, I don't believe Mr. Morrison can actually enforce the eviction right now. File for an emergency stay, citing the criminal investigation. I'll submit a supporting declaration. We'll buy you time." I did exactly that. With Emma's lawyer friend's help, I filed an emergency motion arguing that the eviction should be stayed pending the criminal investigation into whether the underlying property transfer was fraudulent. The judge granted a temporary stay, 60 days to start, subject to extension based on the investigation's progress. Rick and Vanessa hired an expensive legal team to fight it, but the press was now all over the story. Local news ran segments on the victims of Morrison properties. A reporter interviewed me in my living room, my voice shaking as I explained how my own sister had betrayed me in my darkest hour. The segment went viral. People I'd never met sent me messages of support, donations to a GoFundMe someone set up without my knowledge. A local legal aid organization offered to represent me pro bono in any proceedings to recover the house. But the real blow came 3 weeks later. A forensic audit of Morrison Properties revealed that Rick had been running more than just the property scheme. He'd been involved in construction fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. The properties he owned, including mine, had been purchased using money from illegal sources. The federal government stepped in, and suddenly Rick wasn't just facing state charges, he was facing federal prosecution. They arrested him on a Thursday morning. The news showed him being walked out of his office in handcuffs, his face stone cold, refusing to comment. Vanessa stood beside their lawyer at a press conference, her face carefully composed, reading a prepared statement about how she'd had no knowledge of Rick's illegal activities, how she herself was a victim. But the evidence suggested otherwise. Vanessa's signature was on dozens of documents, including the quitclaim deed for my house. She'd been present at multiple closings. She'd received money from the properties directly into her personal accounts. Whether she'd orchestrated the scheme or simply gone along with it, she was implicated. The beautiful house with the white pillars. The state seized it as an asset purchased with proceeds from criminal activity. Vanessa moved in with her mother, our mother, who called me crying one night, asking what had happened, how her daughters had ended up on opposite sides of something so terrible. I didn't have a good answer. I just knew that I hadn't sought this. I hadn't reported. Rick hadn't tipped off the authorities. Other victims had done that. People whose stories were similar to mine, but who'd been brave enough to fight back immediately. I'd just been trying to survive, to keep my head above water, to stay in the home I loved. But karma, it seemed, had its own schedule. 6 months after I signed those papers in the lawyer's office, after the longest 6 months of my life lived in limbo, Patricia Chen called me with news. Sarah, the judge has ruled in the class action suit. All property transfers executed by Morrison Properties in the past 3 years are being reversed. Your house is being returned to you. I actually dropped the phone. Emma picked it up, listened, then screamed with joy. There's more, Patricia continued when I got back on the line, my hands shaking. The mortgage debt Morrison paid off, that payment is being classified as restitution for fraud. You don't owe it back. The house is yours, free and clear. I couldn't process the words. I don't understand. Free and clear? The court is ruling that you were a victim of fraud, and the money Morrison used to pay your mortgage was from illegal sources anyway. The bank has agreed to settle. You keep the house with no mortgage. It's over, Sarah. You won. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd been run over by a truck and had somehow managed to crawl to the other side of the road. But I was alive, and I was home. The legal proceedings dragged on for another year. Rick was convicted on 14 federal charges and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Vanessa pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges, receiving 3 years with possibility of parole. At her sentencing, she looked small and broken, nothing like the confident, elegant woman who'd sat in her beautiful living room and convinced me to sign away my home. Our mother asked me to write a letter to the judge on Vanessa's behalf, asking for leniency. I wrote it, though I don't know if it helped. In the letter, I said that Vanessa was my sister, that I remembered her as the girl who'd held my hand on the first day of school, who'd helped me plan my wedding to Daniel, who'd sat beside me at our father's funeral. I said that people were capable of terrible things when they lost their way, but that didn't erase all the good they'd done before. I didn't say I forgave her. I wasn't sure I did, or ever would. But I said I hoped she'd find a way to live with what she'd done, to become someone better than the person who'd taken my home. She never responded. We haven't spoken since the day she hung up on me. Emma and Marcus helped me repaint the living room. A fresh start for a house that would truly be mine now. No mortgage, no landlord, no one who could take it away. We chose a warm gray color that Daniel would have liked. Subtle, calming, steady. On the first anniversary of the day I'd signed those papers, I held a small gathering at the house. Emma and Marcus, some friends from the hospital, Linda, Patricia Chen, who'd become a friend through the ordeal. We stood in the backyard as the sun set, and I raised a glass. To Daniel, I said, my voice steady, who taught me that home isn't just a place, it's the people we love. And to all of you, who reminded me that family is more than blood. It's who stands beside you when everything falls apart. We drank, and I felt something in my chest loosen. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. Vanessa's betrayal would always be a scar, but it didn't define me. I'd survived. I'd endured. And somehow, impossibly, I'd come out the other side with my home, my children, and my dignity intact. That night, after everyone left, I walked through the house, touching the walls, remembering. Daniel's presence was still here, in the worn spot on the hardwood where he used to stand doing the crossword puzzle, in the loose handle on the hall closet he'd always meant to fix, in the view from the bedroom window where we'd watched countless sunsets together. I'd almost lost this, not to foreclosure. That would have been fate, circumstance, bad luck. I'd almost lost it to betrayal, to cruelty, to someone I trusted completely. That kind of loss leaves a mark that foreclosure never could. But I hadn't lost it. Through no virtue of my own, through no revenge I'd sought or justice I'd demanded, the world had righted itself. Other victims had been brave enough to fight when I'd been too broken. Investigators had done their jobs. A legal system I thought was rigged against people like me had actually worked, slowly and painfully, but worked nonetheless. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd fought differently, if I'd sued Vanessa immediately, if I'd gone to the press myself. Would it have been faster? Would I have felt more in control? Maybe. But I also think about the person I would have had to become to do that, consumed by revenge, driven by anger, defined by the fight. And I realize that by doing nothing except surviving, by simply refusing to leave, by trusting people like Patricia and Emma's lawyer friend, and all the other victims who'd stood up when I couldn't, I'd preserved something essential about myself. I hadn't let Vanessa's betrayal turn me into someone bitter and vengeful. I just kept being who Daniel had loved, someone who showed up for work, who loved her kids, who tried to do the right thing even when the world was demonstrably unfair. Karma didn't strike because I called it down. It struck because Rick and Vanessa had hurt dozens of people. And eventually, those ripples came back. I was just one wave in an ocean of consequences that they'd created themselves. 6 months later, I got a letter from Vanessa. It came from the Women's Correctional Facility, written in her familiar handwriting on cheap paper. I stared at it for 3 days before opening it. Dear Sarah, it began, I don't expect you to read this, and I definitely don't expect you to respond. I just need to say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we did to you, for betraying your trust, for taking advantage of you when you needed help. I tell myself that I didn't fully understand what Rick was doing, that I just went along with it, but that's a lie. I knew. Maybe not every detail, but I knew we were hurting people. I knew we were hurting you. I just didn't let myself think about it. Money and comfort and Rick's approval became more important than being a good person, than being a good sister. I don't know how that happened. I look back at the person I was, and I don't recognize her. Prison gives you a lot of time to think, to see yourself clearly. I don't like what I see. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're still in the house, still living the life you built with Daniel. I hope Emma and Marcus know how lucky they are to have you as their mother, because you never gave up your integrity the way I gave up mine. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that I'm sorry, and that somewhere in the wreckage of